Welcome to Tier 1 Performance Podcast, guys. Mitch Matulia here. We got a special guest named Eric Metz. A little brief introduction on Eric. He is born and raised in Pennsylvania. He was a collegiate athlete. He's now a business owner, personal trainer, and natural bodybuilder. Eric, welcome to the show. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for having me on, Mitch.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Listen, so we're going to get into this. We got a lot of things to cover for our audience out there. We got our bodybuilding audience. We've got our athlete audience. And so we're going to cover a little bit of everything today.
Sure.
Awesome. So first and foremost, where are you from and what's your athletic background?
Sure, yeah. So I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. It's a small town, 2 hours away from Pittsburgh. Collegiate, I played football pretty much throughout my whole life. Even finished my collegiate levels out there as well. Mostly always been a sports athlete, but decided kind of getting the weightlifting after football, keep the competitive nature going, and just want to see, because everybody's always telling me you should do a show and things like that. So, and they said I always got the look, so I might as well try it out and see how it goes and things like that.
Absolutely.
And luckily I was blessed to win first place overall in my first show, so got another one lined up in August for Vegas one. So looking at that, get my pro qualification there.
Yes. We'll get into all of that. How did you first get into bodybuilding and when was that?
Yeah, so I got into bodybuilding, I would say January of 2020 is when, January 2020 is when I actually got into bodybuilding. And reason I got into it was I always wanted to do a show. I never really picked a date, so I was, after football was done, I was just kind of just working out and things like that. So, you know, you got two different perspectives, right? When you're in football, you got more of an athletic background, right? So
Right.
you focus more on explosive movements, right? You try and push as much weight, not really focus on form, not really focus on muscle building, trying to be the most explosive player on the field, right? So I just really want to focus on muscle building and things like that. So I know my body was very small, especially my legs and my back were the weakest points. So for me to really try and compete against top dogs out in there, I decided, you know, I'll just focus on it for a little bit. And 2 years later, a promoter came into my gym and said, hey, there's a competition coming out. So what I like to do most of my lifetime is just throw a dart. So I was like, you know, screw it, fuck it, toss a dart on that and say, hey, I'm just doing a show in October. That was around February and things like that. So that's when I really started training for the bodybuilding. I was already prepping myself there, but I never really had that position of cutting. So for me, I learned that whole spectrum of cutting. That was a learning process for me, going from April all the way to October for the cutting process.
Yes.
And when I thought when I was bulking, I was in shape. But looking back now, I wasn't in shape. So that was a big learning curve for me.
For sure.
Bodybuilding.
And you say explosiveness, back when you were a football player, your training is going to be different than that of a bodybuilder, right? Yeah. So just to break down to some of this younger audience, what exactly type of training were you doing for football? How many reps, how many sets, and the tempo of the repetitions? What was that like for football?
Sure. So, I mean, they're both kind of pretty much similar in things that, you know, what it is like for football, you know, depending on what season you're in too, right? You know, off season, in season. Mostly in off season, you focus more like the 3 to 6 rep range, right? More explosive movements, you know, short sets, you know, try to get as many reps as you can and high weight, right?
Right.
So most of the time, just, you know, you get the both perspective of strength and hypertrophy at the same time too. But again, you're not really focused on the form. You're just more focused, especially on the compound moves like squats, deadlifts, and bench. You're just trying to get the weight up. You're trying to move this weight as fast as you can, as heavy as you can, right? So when you go into bodybuilding, you can still do those things, but technique and form changes a little bit. You focus more on muscle contraction versus just trying to explode the way up. So with that being said, it's like, you know, going through on this journey, I learned, like, especially my chest was a lot weaker than I thought. Like when I was trying to do 120s, I would be like researching, watching videos, other bodybuilders doing it. I I was seeing them like tuck the shoulders back and the shoulders don't come forward.
Right.
Right. So when I started doing that, you know, I went from 120s to 60s because when I took the shoulders out of the picture, trying to engage my chest now, my chest is very weak. So I was like, wow, this is a big difference right there from being an athlete and then being a bodybuilder. And on top of that, your ego's high when you become an athlete. But when you try to be bodybuilding and try and drop the ego, that's the hardest block, you know, you try to switch on. So when you understand the conundrum of what bodybuilding is and what the athlete is, it has 2 different roles. But I feel like bodybuilding and athletic can both play in the picture. It just depends on how well can you train, coach these guys to understand the technique, the form, while they can still move explosive weight on top of that as well. Because when I was doing athlete, I did hurt myself a couple times deadlifting, trying, you know, explode as much weight as I can, and then hurt my SI joint a couple times throughout the whole college. So my SI joint was kind of fucked up for like the whole 4 years I was at college. So it'd be fine a couple times, different seasons, hurt it again, and then it's back to square one again. So wanted to just take the time to really just focus on the movement, focus on form. Strength will increase over time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it just so happens that a lot of professional bodybuilders have a athletic background.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of qualities did you learn as an athlete that have contributed to your success as a bodybuilder?
Yeah, it's just the competitive nature, right? I mean, especially with you guys. When I went to bodybuilding, I was mostly just training myself. So that, having the competitiveness with the guys, you try and compete with your other peers, positions or people within the group that has the same weights, you get that competitive nature against those guys. Like, hey, I can lift more than you, I'm stronger than you, and things like that. When you're by yourself in bodybuilding, you really got no one else. So you pretty much have the mentality of do or die almost kind of every single exercise you're doing, depending on what it is. Accessory is a little different. You just focus on more contracting, make sure you squeeze it, make sure you get the muscles to almost exertion, right? But when it comes to like compound moves, you're trying to build muscle, especially in the off season bodybuilding. That comes a little bit different because again, you're by yourself, so you got no one else to push you. So you really gotta learn how to self-talk and how to motivate yourself when it comes to that reason. And with having an athletic background, it helps a little bit more because you just got that competitive nature going in. So when you do workouts, weights, reps, sets, and all those things like that, you don't really need someone to kind of push you. You just got to learn how to self-talk yourself, especially when you're by yourself.
For sure, for sure. And at Tier 1 Performance, we use an acronym called MBM, Mindset Builds Mastery. And what that mainly means is you don't have to love the journey, you just have to love the end result, which is winning. And that's why we love the athletic mindset of discipline and pushing yourself and going beyond your limits. Not really, you don't have to enjoy the food, you don't have to enjoy the training sessions, but what you do enjoy is the final destination. And Is that something that you kind of believe in yourself?
So yeah, I like to take one step further. I like how you go with that, but I like to say most of the time you enjoy the journey, not the destination, right? Because sometimes you try to focus on destination, you get burned out really fast, right?
Correct.
So when you try to focus on all different areas of the perspective of where you're trying to go, whether you're an athlete or you're bodybuilding, you always want to enjoy the journey along the way because you don't want to burn yourself out. Because along the journey, there's always going to be roadblocks, right? There's going to be injuries. There's going to be like people trying temptations, trying to tell like, hey, you should come out with us, or like, let's go eat this food, or, like, oh, you don't skip training one day. It's not going to hurt you, right? So when you got like, this is pretty much find the balance of that, while you're also in that destination, and make sure you enjoy the journey at the same time, because you got to look at the end result further down the road versus just there now.
Right. Now, that's a very good point that you made. And to a lot of these young kids out there, first getting into weightlifting, you being a fitness expert and a bodybuilder, what kind of advice would you give to a kid who's just getting into training for the first time with no real guidance? Mm-hmm. What would you advise? How should they start? Where should they start?
So I would just start with like the foundation movements. I would start with understanding how to squat, how to hinge, push, a pull, and some type of carry. Just get yourself into it. If you're not really used to it, those aspects, that's the first place I would start. Just doing those 5 basic movements will help you learn the foundation and like get your body overall strength. Because a kid can learn that for like 3 times a week and things like that, and over time, their body will start to adapt. Now, once the body starts adapting, then it can progress in different formulas, different programs, different splits, and things like that. Once the body understands the mechanics, the form, the techniques, but all the time too. Also, if you're starting out, don't have that mindset of trying to lift as much as you can. Like, everybody's in there the same reason. You just gotta understand like what's your reason for it, right? If you're trying like be the best player out there, make sure you do everything correctly. Make sure you do the reps right. Make sure you do the form correctly. Make sure you do everything not to a T, but as perfect as you can, right? So if you're starting out, I would start with those 5 basic movements. Make sure like you record yourself too. If you're by yourself, you got no one else with you, make sure you do all those things. Jot down everything. Tracking is going to help you a lot more than you just try and wing it every time. So if you just have a pen and paper, track down progression is going to be the best friend, to be honest. So if you keep track of everything you're doing, keep track of all the all the sets, all the reps, all the weights you do, over time you're going to progress to a better athlete.
Wait, so you wouldn't advise going 7 days a week, every single day? A
No,
lot of these young kids out there, they think they need to lift every single day. Tell us the value of rest days.
rest is very important because again, your body needs to recover, right? So if you don't get the proper nutrition, the sleep, the hydration, and just kind of reduce the stress to your body's going to fatigue over time. So for athletes, 3, 4 times maybe at max, they need to work out.
Yeah.
Again, depending on what stage they're in, what grades, what type of level, what sport. It all varies on mostly certain athletes, but most of the time it all combines one, depending on what the focus is. You got baseball. Baseball's got a little bit different training styles than football. Football's got different training styles than volleyball, etc., like that. So, but for most athletes, 3 to 4 times max is good. Splitting it up, upper, lower. If it's 3 times, full body be the most beneficial. But if you guys are not getting the proper nutrition is going to be playing an important role, especially protein. Protein is going to help you keep that muscle growing or maintaining, depending on what stage of the season you're in. Carbohydrates and fats, you also need those because those are your energy supplies. So if you feel like your workout's fatiguing, you're plateauing, you're not as getting as strong as you like, that's another beneficial of why your performance is not the way it should be at 100% all the time, right?
Right.
Hydration also plays a factor because you need your body to rehydrate yourself. Your muscles like 70% of water.
Mm-hmm.
So if your muscles don't have any fluids, it's not going to perform at its time and have a chance of hurting it over time. Same thing with sleep. Sleep is the biggest factor that anybody can use of. If you don't get the proper amount of sleep, you're not really recovering that well. Your body may recover a little bit, but the sleep is not good. If the sleep is not there, your body's not going to recover fully or be in potential at next best the next day.
Because you're utilizing your natural growth hormones
Mm-hmm.
during sleep. So to all those kids out there who are getting 5 hours of sleep, staying up late playing video games, what's the right amount of sleep for athletes?
So it depends on, most of the time when it comes down to it depends on the athlete, right? It depends what grade they're in, type of sport they're in, etc., like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of the time, athletes should at least get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, regardless of it. 7 to 9 hours of sleep can get you, well rested, can get you about 100% every time. And, also, especially for males, testosterone is a big factor, right?
Yes.
So for us, if we're staying up 5 hours, getting sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, playing video games, not recovering, testosterone plays a huge role from young males. So if they're not producing or getting the recovery they need to, then they're at a disadvantage against other competitors out there who are in the top shape and things.
Yes. Thank you for noting that. I think sleep's a huge factor with a lot of people. We don't get enough of it.
Right.
You have to make time for sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's essential. So to kind of shift gears into more of a bodybuilding questions for those out there. Now, what is the name of your federation that you compete in, and how is it different from that of, say, the MPC or other bodybuilding federations out there?
Yeah, so the federation I'm in it's a branch off of IFBB, but it's Physique America, and that type of federation is more, they kind of try and go more natural.
Mm-hmm.
So they got a very list of all the drug rules, all the drug prohibits that you can't use in that show. So it's a very, very well-rounded natural qualifications.
Yes.
So if you try to do the grow, TRT, trend, diabolics, any of those things, they would catch that off the spot. Or they would notify like, hey, this person used it, and then they disqualify the next person up. So they're very strict on the drugs and things like that. That's what I like about that federation. What's different between that is, with the MPC and this type of federation, MPC,
WBFF, right?
Yeah.
There's another one out there.
There's another one out there, GBO, the IFBB, regular IFBB.
Correct.
They all use enhancers, right? So the difference between that and the natural qualification is a lot more different because enhanced can start 12 weeks before the show happens. Natural has to start at least 16, 20, even 24, depending on the person's body response. For me, I can go 16 to 20 because I'm hyper responsive and my body can adapt quickly to certain changes.
Right.
But someone who doesn't have that metabolism or has that advantage, they might have to go 24 weeks of the natural. Versus where the enhanced can go 12 weeks because they can recover a lot quicker than natural. So we're talking about sleep, that's where it becomes very important for natural bodybuilders because if you don't get enough sleep, you're not getting that amount of rest, you're not getting that amount of recovery, and you're not getting that amount of great performance that you need to take advantage of to push yourself to the next level. So that's the difference between those two. Is they can recover faster versus you can't. They can train a lot. They can push a lot more weight. They can train harder than you can. Be enhanced versus not. Because again, there's a little bit more advantage that goes into it. Because you get growth hormones, boosted testosterone versus natural. You don't produce as much, so you try to do the best you can to push your body to the limit.
For sure. And you entered your first show in October, correct?
That's correct.
It was a local show here in Houston.
Yep.
And so, did they drug test you before that show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many weeks, how many days before that show did they do that?
It was actually on the same day.
On the same day.
Yeah, on the same
okay.
Day.
So it's very strict, very stern with that regulations. And so, you won first place. How was your first show experience overall? Like, how was your presentation on stage, and how do you feel? The package you brought to the physique for your first time, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so a little backstory before I get into that. I was 40 pounds going 6 months going to the show, and then when I thought I was on track leading up to it 5 weeks before the show, I did a miscalculation at times. So I recalculated. I was still 20 pounds away from the show, and that was 5 weeks left. So for me to lose 20 pounds in 5 weeks, that was a little stressful and a little detrimental, because when I looked at myself a couple weeks ago, my body would change completely. Like I lost a lot of muscle mass. I was leaning things that I was shredded, but I didn't have the size I wanted to, because I just had to choose A or B, right?
Yes.
Choose B to have that same muscle but not make weight and be in a different division, or choose A, to sacrifice the loss of muscle, get to the goal weight, and just present as best as I can. Right. So that's what I had to go through. So looking at stage, definitely could have been a lot. It's going to be definitely a lot more improvements moving forward against that. Definitely correct calculations, right pace markers, I would say, versus me just trying to be stressful in the last 5 weeks. But I would say another thing too, I would half-ass my posing a little bit. I would do 2 or 3 times a week and things that, 4 months out, or even 2 months out. And for a national, it's probably not the best idea for you to do it. Reason is because you got other people, at least especially top dogs, who are posing 4 or 5 months out. You're at a disadvantage because, as you know, you've done bodybuilding show, conditioning plays a very big role, right?
Especially at the amateur level.
Right. Huge. So, and then especially for me getting my pro card now, it's going to be even more of a stress for me, because now they're going to look at me as hey, you're in a pro show now, you should come at your best and things like that. So now it's posing could be more crucial and more beneficial for me down the road, especially at the top notch. So when I was presenting, I just kind of blanked out. I was just there, just listening to what the judge was telling me, and just posing. Routine was good and things that. Definitely when I was posing, I could definitely feel I was not conditioned as I need to be. I started sweating up on stage, started cramping a little bit too.
Yep.
So that was definitely something I had to learn from that last show, was understanding conditioning is very important. And just getting that experience of standing on stage and presenting yourself, never done like that. Always perform in front of fans and against other players, but that's a different feeling versus when you're just on the stage, posing for muscles and telling them what to do and things like that. So that's a whole different, spectrum of being on the field versus being on stage.
Correct, because when you're on the field with a team, you rely on each other. When you're on stage, it's just you up there.
Right.
So it's hey, win or lose, you only have yourself to blame, right? And that's, I guess, one of the things I love about bodybuilding is that you control the outcome, essentially. I mean, yeah, there's the judging subjective, but you control how much effort you put in for your own performance.
Right.
Now, explain to us. So for those of you who don't know, Eric and I have the same coach, same bodybuilding coach. We're teammates, and we did a little bit of posing with each other, entering your first show. And I think it was a couple of nights before the show began. He goes, "Hey man, I threw together my posing routine," and so we did some stuff last minute, right, for your first show. Right. You live and you learn. What are some areas you need to improve on personally to be at your best for your next show to become a professional?
Sure. So I would say it pretty much just comes to anything procrastination, right? You set blocks in your schedule and your time to do those things, right? Posing 30 minutes a day, find a time block, whether that's regular posing routine, anything along those lines, blocking out those times so you actually can do it. That's what, when he's mentioned, I did, but a week before my show happened, I found out about posing routine, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about posing routine is it's a lot different than you just posing for a muscle group for a certain amount of time.
Correct.
Versus what posing routine is choreography, right? So if you don't really understand the choreography things of that nature, you're pretty much you're second guessing yourself. So you're not as fluent, you're not as smooth with it, and you're trying to think of like what movements you had it planned
Yes.
to go with the music, right?
Right.
So preparation is very key. So again, there's always saying, you plan to fail, you fail to plan, right?
Exactly.
So it's like that's a weakness I always have, and that's always how I was school. So with me doing procrastination in school, it just kind of let me do that too. But I mean, I think that's everybody too, right?
Right.
Procrastination is the biggest, detrimental to reaching success, goals, results, whatever the case may be, right? So I think for me, it's just blocking out the time slots in my schedule to understand, like to learn posing, routines, all those things along those lines.
Yes. Yes. I could not agree more. And so you said your next show's in Vegas, correct?
Yes.
And so are you in the heart of off season right now?
So I'm switching to prep season now.
Prep season.
I'm in the transition, switching to prep season.
And when is that show in Vegas?
August 3rd.
August 3rd.
Yep.
And so you're how many weeks out?
Less than 16 weeks.
Less than 16 weeks. Yep. Awesome. Awesome. And so what are some of the training techniques that you utilize 16 weeks out? Is it the same workout split, or does the split, do the reps change, and does the weight change?
So when it comes to that, you still use the same movements, right?
Okay.
It all depends on like what you're trying to focus on, but now the kind of reps change a little bit more to higher volume, right?
Right.
You focus more on 10 to 25, really, regardless if it's compound movement, accessories, anything along those lines. You focus about 10 to 25, 3 to 6 sets, give and take on, depending on what periodization you're on, how deep of the weeks you're in, things along those lines. Now, when you go into that prep mode, you focus more on fixated positions, meaning you focus on Smith machines versus, barbells and things like that. Because at that moment in time, if you try and do 12 reps, let's say, for example, you're just trying to fatigue the muscle as much as you can. What you can do on a barbell, but what breaks down first is your technique and your form.
Right.
So when those mechanicals break down first, before the muscle, you're not going to get the most out of it. So my transition when I put myself in prep mode is I switch from barbell to Smith machine. That's going to be your most bang for your buck. Now, I know probably growing up, you always get that saying, it's like, oh, Smith machine is bad for you, right? It's not necessarily. Like, Smith machine is a great tool. I like to utilize for my clients as well, just to help them understand how they engage the muscle. But I feel like they're not ready for that barbell movement, things like that. So Smith machines, I can definitely, any type of machine like hack squats, like using hack squats for quad builders. Smith machines for the most part of the incline press. I use that a lot to build my upper chest.
Yes.
So I love using machines coming down more towards the prep season, just to utilize more bang for the buck. Also be kind of injury free towards that way as well.
I was just about to say, do Smith machines, do you feel like it limits your injuries during a prep process and it just isolates the muscle fibers a little bit?
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you on that, because at the time, again, your muscle is going to fatigue faster than your mechanical of the form will. So with that being said, it's like and what's cool is once you start fatiguing, there's a certain point where you can't push yourself, especially when by yourself, you can hook yourself.
Yes.
You can get yourself out of it. Versus if you were to do it with the barbell, you either look like a fool out in the gym or you try to push up, but with that form, right? So yeah. I would say Smith machine is 100%, truly less on the joints, focus more on the muscles.
I like that. And so tell us a little bit about your business and how can our viewers out there access what you offer?
Yeah, so you can reach me 2 ways. If you're local in Houston, I work at a gym called Houston Gym, personal training there. Mostly there Monday through Saturday, pretty much all there all day. So if you come and walk in, I'll be there all day. I have also an online business. If you guys outside in the world, online business called Iron Body Performance. You can reach me at Instagram, Coach Metzy7, or Facebook at Eric Metz. So that's where they can reach me out for my business. And for the online side of things, I focus on 2 spectrums. If you want to focus on training, we can do that. If you want to focus on nutrition, or we can do a combination of both. And what that case is, you get 4 weekly check-ins. We break down everything, figure out where you're at, what we need to do, give you a nice plan, periodization where to go to.
Yes.
And we go from there and things like that. So
very nice. Well, make sure you check them out, guys. What are some of your goals and plans with bodybuilding and fitness in general? Like, so pending this competition in August, say you win it, what's next for Eric Metz?
So after that, we just continue on the federation. and more natural competitor for the bodybuilding things that. So depending on what that federation is going to entail, or we have to go to another one,
Yeah.
that be entailed to what that show has to offer and things that. After bodybuilding too, it all depends on. I'm going to be focused more on my business online. Going to try and just keep changing the game and things that try to help as many people as I can.
Yes.
Focus on themselves, especially for me. Mostly, I work with gym populations, so unlike Mitch, he works with athletes, but my main focus is working in gym pops, helping lose weight or helping build muscle or just restoring the metabolism. That's what I like the best, and that's what I'm just trying to change the game of.
You have a wide range of clientele, correct?
For the most part, yes. Most of my successful people are 25 to 35, white collars. Reason is because I can relate them, and I can resonate with them more.
Right.
Versus, I do have some clients who are 50s to 60s. Either married, have kids, or have a lot more life experience than I do. So for me, it's hard to resonate with them because they're gonna look down and it's like, why am I gonna listen to a 25-year-old if I'm like 55, right?
Yes.
So it's like they're more hard-headed, ego is very high, and it's a little bit more stubborn, right? Because as us males, that's how we are. We're mostly independent. We don't like to help, right?
Right.
So for me, I like working with those because I've seen more success. I can resonate with them, and this kind of fit my criteria, right? If they're single or have a partner, it's not that much difficult because I can resonate with them. Plus, the job's not stressful too. So I like to work with nurses, teachers, lawyers, anything along those lines because I have all different programs for each occupation I go to.
That's awesome. And guys, so if you're in Houston area and you want to come visit Houston Gym sometime, Eric's there, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to kick your butt. I've seen him train with a lot of clients, and he's an expert at what he does. And what's a good Instagram handle to find you at?
Yeah, so Instagram is gonna be Coach_MetzyWetsy7. And I got the name Metzy Wetsy from high school, so I just put a coach in front of it, just keep the high school name and plus make it professional at the same time.
Keep the street cred.
Yeah, you're right.
Keep the
Of course.
well,
So-
Eric, man, it's been an honor and privilege to have you on. I really appreciate you taking the time
Yes.
and sharing all your info and all your intellect with our audience. And man, see us again sometime.
Appreciate you having me on, Mitch.
3, 2,